Sales and marketing, right, can be great partners, but in a lot of firms, it's like they're on, from two tribes or they live on a different side of a cement wall, right? So how do you handle that, right? So marketing, the job is to help salespeople have more meaningful conversations at scale, right? But salespeople need to feed back. Comes to sales, you're getting that really granular emotional feedback, what's resonating, what's not.
Eddie, welcome to Getting It Wrong to Get It Right. How are you?
I'm doing great, Joe. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm doing great. The sun is shining here. I was just out for a walk, run, just before we came on. I'm sneakily doing some running.
Congratulations. You don't even look sweaty.
Yeah, it's prepared right after this. I have to take some time. So Eddie, the reason why I asked you on, the word professor jumped out at me, and it's a great marketing tool. And I want to ask you a question. This is all about knowledge and helping business owners. What draw you towards creating funnels for people? And I'll ask the second part of that. What is a funnel?
All right. Broadly, I think the work that I do is putting together 3D puzzles. So there's all these concepts, tools, and people that need to be organized and in harmony to build big revenue streams for companies, right? So we like to work with companies where we think they have a good or a great product, and not enough people are enjoying what that is, right? The value is not being consumed in the marketplace. And so for me, just from an intellectual perspective, building, sales and marketing stacks and teaching the people that use them how to do them right, I think is fascinating, right? And then the end product, really though, it's sort of, there's all this stuff going on behind the scenes, but when you do it right as the buyer, you don't realize any of that's happening. You're just like, wow, this is exactly what I want, and I know how to get it, and now I've got it, right? So I think that's fascinating. What is a funnel? Generally, there are more complex models that have 7 stages. I generally think of them in 3. So our logo has a 3-stage funnel, but we generally think of the top of the funnel as how do I find strangers and get their attention. The middle of the funnel is generally, I have their attention. How can I help them, get clarity, have some trust, and understand if they want what I have, how to get it. And then the bottom of the funnel is, generally where a transaction occurs, right? So if there's a salesperson involved, that's going to be the closer at the end of the day. That may end up with a contract or some sort of, invoice being paid or something like that. Or for digital products, when we do software as a service or e-commerce, it's more of a hands-off process, right? So somebody's just self-serve, understanding what they want, they think they found it and they buy it, sort of a thing. So it's that, for me, it's a funnel at the end of the day is strangers end up buying something, to overgeneralize.
Yeah, I like to use funnels and the law of reciprocity, and it's giving something to somebody which is of high value to them, which they will then look at, build trust, and maybe then come to an agreement to have a conversation with you. Mm-hmm. Simple saying it like that. However, there has to be so many different touch points, from the language that is being used, the colors, the imagery. There's a lot of subconscious stuff that's going on to drive people right through this lead funnel to get to a point. And there's an art to it, definitely an art to it. What made you go down that road? Why did you decide to go, this is my business? This is, instead of choosing something else?
I think the immature psychology part is interesting. I think in some ways, this business found me. Earlier businesses, in my 20s, I ended up sort of doing that work. I was a real estate broker in Latin America, and ended up, we needed to source clients globally. I was the digital person in the firm, and I just thought it was fascinating. So I think I started doing it without really knowing what it was. So doing it sort of in industry, and then over time, all these terms in this space sort of, as my career started, sort of, all these SEO, SEM, paid social media's existence in the first place, all those things sort of came online, and I always thought it was really interesting, right? So that sort of intersection between technology and helping people get what they want, digital driven firms, that just sort of found me more than anything. And then, as I reached this stage with Sales Funnel Professor, I thought this is kind of interesting. I could not only do this for people, but teach them at the same time. And so to me, I think it's fascinating work because I see so much stuff globally and I get so much exposure. So it's really neat to sort of take something that I'm seeing over here in this industry or this company, and can I tweak it a little bit and apply it over there? So, I think those are just from an intellectual curiosity perspective, it's a good fit for things that I like to.
I think curiosity is key. It's about sale, it's about contact, and it's about attention and interest and conviction and creating desire and close. And when they get from that funnel, okay, what does the salesperson do? And teaching the salesperson to have that conversation to close the deal. The one thing which I find really fascinating about funnels is the amount of testing and tweaking that needs to be worked on. So is that something that you get a buzz on when you're doing the testing and looking at it, that you've been doing it so long? You go, like a new project excites me, really excites me when I get a new group of people and mold them into professional salespeople. It's the same thing. Do you get the same thing for funnels?
I do. I think that it's pretty common for companies that have these challenges. So two things to touch on there. Sales and marketing, right, can be great partners, but in a lot of firms, it's like they're on, from two tribes, or they live on a different side of a cement wall, right? So how do you handle that, right? So I actually just bought a book by a friend of mine that's on that topic, and I'm about halfway through it. So I can't tell you, I don't want to put any spoilers out there, but I blogged on this topic a couple of years ago, but setting the table, right? So marketing, the job is to help salespeople have more meaningful conversations at scale, right? But salespeople need to feed back. Hey, when I'm actually talking to this person, because marketing, we're not, generally we're dealing in hundreds or thousands, right, of contacts, so to speak, right? But when it comes to sales, you're getting that really granular emotional feedback. What's resonating, what's not, what's relevant, what isn't. So that sort of thing. So yeah, testing those things for sure. But yeah, when a company has historically had salespeople that are really just hunting, and they're almost hunting on their own, and marketing has tried a bunch of stuff, but it really hasn't contributed anything to those people, there's this sort of dysfunction. And we often end up cleaning that up pretty quickly, right? Creating that alignment, and that the company, you can feel the whole vibe change. It's pretty awesome. You know what I mean? In the whole company. Yeah.
Synergy. I always say to people, the reason why it's called sales and marketing and not marketing and sales, even though marketing comes before sales, is because if you do a deep dive into the whole psychology of how it's sold and the person's needs and their wants, and the salesperson walks them through these, that information that the salesperson is collecting, from fact finding and asking questions and offering insights, is gold to a marketing team for their funnels, for their blogs, for their posts. It's everything that the salesperson's asking should be used in all the marketing as well. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's spot on. And really good marketing from sales, when you have those conversations, you start to understand what the real objections are, right? It's hard to kind of get to what are the objections going to be just through pure sort of stats-based research, right? But once you get those, the most friction-free sales funnels, right? If you're smart about it, you can surface those objections before they ever meet with a salesperson, deal with them, right, and wipe those off the table, right? So the more that you can, from a marketer's perspective, the better job you can do of helping the salesperson be as close to an order taker as you can, the more efficient and the faster that company can grow.
I keep saying to the sales professionals that we train, stop you saying and thinking objections. I say to them, I want you to start thinking concerns. So if someone says to you no, or gives a objection, I want you to, in your mind, visualize the person saying, I have a little concern there. Maybe you could answer for me. And that softens the blow and makes it more conversational so it continue on. But if you then get all them and put them into the funnel, it even makes it a lot easier as well.
Yeah. And I completely agree with that framing piece. If for somebody who's new to sales, with sales culture, with Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, ABC, Coffees for Closers, Boiler Room, et cetera, in the popular media, sales is it's a combat sport, right? No. And I always tell people, imagine, they're coming into it, and I work with CEOs who end up being salespeople and sometimes engineers and people that aren't maybe extroverted or whatever. And both sides have a lot of cortisol in these conversations. You can tell from the video recordings. And I say, listen, your job is not to do anything to this person. It's just to help them make the right decision for them. So it isn't two people like this. If you can imagine, we're both sitting on the same side of the table and we're looking at a whiteboard together. that's where I want people mentally to be going into those sales calls. And yeah, you're right. It's not an objection. It's just an opportunity to educate somebody.
It's building trust, and it's two people coming to an agreement.
Yep.
I often say when I'm doing some coaching, I would say to them, have you ever bought something of high value, a car or a house? And people go, yeah. I said, and was there a salesperson involved? Yeah. I said, were you sold to? Or did you come to a conclusion that you wanted to buy it? I said, we came to a conclusion that we bought it. I said, but the sales guy was walking you through. And the sales guy was probably going, okay, will I ask for the close now? Will I hit them now? Will I, he's, asking these things. But I says, we're all really good at buying. And one of the greatest things that I think that a company should have, and I'm going to ask you, how many companies would you feel that they don't even have them, is a sales funnel with some sort of reciprocity operation in it that actually helps people towards making a decision? Do you think we're still way off with a lot of organizations?
I would have to say we are. And I think that there are a lot of firms that know some buzzwords and they know enough to say, hey, we want to spend some money on this, or we want to spend some money on that, or we have this sort of function. But I think there are very few firms internally that know enough about how, like, what does SEO do when it's done right versus like what you can, what ChatGPT would tell you what SEO is, right? And across all of these things, because especially for digital, right, there's a lot of complexity, right? So yeah, I would tend to agree with you that they may say they have funnels, so to speak, or they may have different tops of funnels. They may not even use that terminology, but they might have, oh yeah, we got an SEO guy. And I would, meet that firm and say, okay, well, what does that person do for you? And I look at their numbers and I go, it sounds to me like this person maybe they know how to, optimize a blog post, right? But that's not SEO in the way that's ever going to make money for this company, right? To do SEO right, you have to identify the phrases that your buyer is going to search and be the choice for Google. And so that across all of these different pieces of funnels, I think is, to your point, that's exactly right. They say they're doing things, but because it's not optimized, if there's a salesperson who's supposed to be at the end of it, they're still doing a ton of sort of outbound cold work because the inbound flows are not there. Yeah. So funnels, an outbound funnel, ABM, I would consider that a funnel. Account-based marketing, that is a type of funnel. But when we talk about having funnels, in the way it's used more broadly, often that kind of means an inbound. And a lot of companies, they don't have inbound at all.
I've caught myself over the last 2 weeks not Googling information, but using an app on WhatsApp, an AI app on WhatsApp, or using an AI app on my computer. I think Elon Musk brought it out. I'm working out, running and walking. I'm in a fit zone at the moment. And I'm, instead of Googling, I'm dropping, into AI. I want to lose, a couple of pounds in X amount of time instead of searching. And then I'm asking some other stuff and it's coming through. And in doing that, I see that these new tools are going to affect AdWords, Google AdWords. And I know Google are trying to do other stuff on it as well. Funnels, I think, are going to play a great part for organizations as an outreach tool instead of an inbound tool, that they can use this funnel to get people in. Because if people aren't searching, like I was saying to AIs, how do I get you to get me up on AI if someone is asking a question about sales training? Is that going to be the next wave of how we're operating and searching for information?
It is going to be the next wave. So AEO, right? Artificial intelligence, SEO, right? It isn't wholly different from the way you do SEO for Google. So Google years ago started basically trying to surface curated information into the search results, question and answer, expandable content. So you'll see the question, right? You'll see the answer and Google will say the source, right? So in your case, right, if it's questions about sales practice and best practices and those sorts of things, doing the work to be Google's answer, right, is in many ways is one and the same to be ChatGPT's answer, right? So it will be for the how-to stuff, right? Historically, you might have written a how-to article and somebody would consume it on your blog. Now they will consume a curated version of it in the browser or in ChatGPT's results. But Grok is the one you're describing. Grok is X.AI, which is Elon Musk. Their market share is tiny, but he just merged that with X, meaning the old Twitter. That's one and the same. That does not send a lot of traffic, but ChatGPT, HubSpot, for example, as a CRM recognizes ChatGPT as a top of funnel source in the same way it does organic search via Google, Bing, Yahoo. So yeah, there's already optimization for that. We do that process. The thought process is I mean, the way to sort of rank, so to speak, for AI is sort of, it has a lot in common with SEO and that sort of carve out piece. So there's a lot of overlap, but there are some nuances to it as well. But yeah, fundamentally, what AI wants to do is figure out who are the authorities, right? Because to your point, there's the DIY person who's just trying to figure out like, what is the answer? But then for you and I and others that basically do the answer, so to speak, at speed, the next logical question is like, got it. I don't think I have time, or I don't have the appetite to, train this or do the research and train my team. Who is the guy? The guy is Joe Dalton, and you're going to be the source. So it's fundamentally it's similar, but it is definitely a slightly different flow for sure.
Yeah,
but that's only going to grow. Agree with you.
I think it is. I think 2025, 2026 is going to be fascinating. Like, you'll see AIs out there disappearing like Squarespace, because other AIs will have, like Facebook, will grow. Also, I'm saying to our clients that they need to start being influencers. And it's not like an influencer out there who has millions of followers and is eating a Snickers bar, or a candy and taking a picture of shoes. It's an influencer within their industry. And that is with podcasting or writing a book. Like, we help people with podcasts or help them write books as well. As ourselves, we're two authors. We're an author of 2 books and a third one coming out soon. These are all very important for every industry. And if someone has a book, they need a funnel. Would you agree with that as well?
Yeah. The way that books work, books can be a top of funnel, i.e., I was searching a topic in Amazon, or I went to, in the United States, Barnes and Noble, to the extent they still exist. And I was in the business section and I saw a cover and I loved it and I read it. And then I'm like, yeah, I want these guys to do this for me. Like, they put what they can in a book. I just need it done for me, right? I don't want to manage it from this book. So it's a top of funnel. But then, to your point, also, books and podcasts act as middle of funnel too, right? So if you have the chops to write a book or a podcast, either of which gets any traction, that's sort of a shortcut to saying this person has a ton of credibility. They actually know what they're talking about, right? So it's a way to certainly separate yourself in your industry from others that are more novice level.
It's podcasting is really weird. Like, I've been doing this since 2016. I've a lot of it under my belt. Like, here's the mad thing. I did it for so long and still doing it, as we say. And there was a time that I kind of took a little bit of a break. I still did one every couple of months, but took a bit of a break. Like, we had it in the top 10 in America. We had, I've had maybe 10 or 12 people that have been on Oprah and then taking a break. And it's interesting how the numbers drop because you take a break, even though you have them. So then I said, look, I better get back into the game. I've had my holiday, and started doing them once a week again. And you see the volume, the numbers and the downloads coming up to about 60,000 now.
Good.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, if you take your foot off the gas, it loses. So you have to be congruent with everything that you do.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. I think podcasting as a funnel is more similar. It's less evergreen, let's put it that way. It takes longer to get it going because you have to develop a certain amount of following before you'll actually get leads from it. But you do have to commit to it, right? Yeah. So it's like having a dormant social media profile. If you don't post regularly, like you said, the algorithms are going to discount you rather quickly.
It's like Twitter.
Yeah. It's a commitment. It's absolutely a commitment, for sure. The podcast too, doing podcasting, especially if you take that content and repurpose it, and there's a great book on that, Content Inc. is a good one, but that can feed other types of funnels too. That can feed blog posts. You can, Twitter and all this stuff.
It drives around. I think funnels are more, if you look at a funnel, which is like a squeeze page, a landing page, I think they are more important than a website. And I know a lot of people will disagree. I say a website is a place where you store everything and you keep it that if someone wants to have a look. Because I've known people that have bought stuff from landing pages and they've never looked at websites.
Sure.
Yeah. And I've also myself, I've purchased stuff through a landing page, through a funnel, and went through the funnel and never looked at the website. So I think they're a key. I think there's smaller business out there that probably wouldn't need to have a website, but definitely need a funnel. And they could pull them to a Facebook page or LinkedIn or whatever. But definitely, I think a funnel is a big investment and the right investment that a lot of companies should spend on.
I think the classic small business mistake is thinking that a website, whether it's a single page, which would in essence be a landing page, or, a 10-page site or having a blog or whatever, that having it in the first place equals an SEO top of funnel. And we're not in, the .com bubble where if you bought plants.com, you had traffic, right? So that is past. So agree with that. I think good marketers can do the same thing on a website as a landing page does. I mean, when you get a lot of the stuff we build, we'll watch people hit the website, and then you can actually watch the video recordings if you care to, and they don't navigate, but it behaves just like a landing page. There's navigation there if they want it, but if the writing is right, you've de-risked it, they understand, they know what to do to get the value, it will functionally behave the same way. They won't navigate around. They'll just book the meeting or buy it or whatever as well. So they're not mutually exclusive. The landing pages do a great job of sort of curating, right, and giving people less to think about. As long as you do it well and that it doesn't cause distrust, it can absolutely shorten things up. And there's a pretty good way to use this.
It's definitely, it has those keywords. It's pulling at the heartstrings. It's, like, why do people buy things? If you really look at the psychology behind it and strip it back, the layers back, they buy something because they want to fulfill a need. Mm-hmm. And that could be fulfillment. But if you really strip it back, it's to make their life better in anything, time, whatever it is, it's to do an improvement in their life. And that's why people buy things.
Yeah, that's accurate. I think there's too many companies don't speak to the transformation. You need those before and after elements, before us without our product or service, after, right? Does after look like the promised land to you? They're gonna take that action.
Well, I tell you my analogy of a website. I say to someone said, I have a website, I'm not getting anything. I said, look, a website is like a book in a library on a shelf, and there's hundreds of books on that library. And if you're looking for a book, maybe the librarian may show you the book, but it's there with hundreds. But now remember, there's thousands and thousands of libraries around the world, and that's what a website is like. Or you get people saying, oh, my website, it's not working. Or it says a website is like a car. It does break down. It needs to be repaired. And sometimes you actually need to replace it as well because it isn't what it used to be.
Accurate. Or put some gas in the tank. I mean, a lot of websites, I just look at it and go, lovely website, you have no traffic. Or you have traffic, none of it's relevant, right? What's it going to do with that, right? Yeah, it can't do anything. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you absolutely have to refresh for sure.
Say in the next couple of years, really interested in, a futurist point of view from yourself. Mm-hmm. That's in 25, 26 and beyond.
From a sales perspective, I get asked this question a lot. So I think the SDR function is going away to a large extent. Somewhat more senior salesperson can basically run volume. And we see this a ton, especially on firms that don't do inbound well at all. They're basically running a bunch of AI bots concurrently. From a labor perspective, it's more affordable. Using AI, it can be really, we've been talking about trust. You can use AI in a way that really enhances trust. So if it's a research tool, and you're only talking to the right people because you're using it right, and you're telling them, you've done research on them and you've read it and you're talking to them about the right things. Even if you use AI to draft the outreach, I mean, fine, but it's a lot more relevant. So I think we'll see a lot more relevant conversations for the firms that use it correctly. I think the SDR function is largely going to go away. I used to, at one point I had a team of 10 SDRs that were just setting meetings, right? And now I get daily, probably 10 people prospecting me saying, all I want to do is set meetings for you with AI. So that's certainly possible. So an interesting thing for you and I and others is, okay, great. The SDR function doesn't exist anymore, but for somebody, the world needs great salespeople who can speak, have human to human conversations, right? So how do you cut your teeth, right? That'll be really interesting how that works, right? So I'm curious how that's going to play out for sure.
Like, would you buy something of high volume of artificial intelligence? You want to buy it off a human.
Right. But specifically a human with credibility, right? Yeah. And gravitas. But how do you develop that, right? So at least historically, you've owned more and more of, you start off with just prospecting, then you might actually take meetings, then you might actually be the closer, and then you might be closing more and more complex and higher dollar. That is a trajectory to build a sales career. So how does that play out? It's a really good
Yeah, if we get a sales team, we can, if we get an average sales team,
uh
we can boost our revenue by 33%.
hmm
And we have a system where you can ROI it. So you know where someone is failing in each part of it. And the object of it is that, yeah, and I agree, like call centers are going to be done away with. You're going to have AI agents and looking after 95%. And there's going to be a new role, which will be an AI coordinator. And that's a human with AI with the company. Anyone that's looking to invest in themselves at a young age, that's something I'd look at. Or be a tradesman like electrician or a plumber, because we'll need them as well. But I do see that order takers are going to be done away with. I do believe that the not order takers, but guy who thinks he knows how to sell but can't sell. And organizations will need people who are professional in selling to drive the business forward as well and close more deals.
I agree with that. I think there are a lot of organizations that have a value prop that requires teaching. I mean, there's just an education component that marketing can't handle, and you can't pass that off to someone junior. And so, yeah, I think that's right. I think that, when I look at a particular, product or service, I very quickly will go, I could have somebody just buy this with nobody involved, or I go, I'm absolutely going to need a closer on this one, right? And it's one or the other, right? So I totally
like a carton
agree
of
with
milk. There'll be, small items you won't need people. We don't at the moment. You go into a store now and you just pick up something and swipe it. And there is small items you won't need. But I think for the more complex items, like I think VW in Germany are doing away with salespeople in dealerships, and they're just going to have the dealership, the people buy online and the dealership ship it. So it'll be interesting to see how that rolls out.
I agree with you. I think in the US market, there are a ton of services where there's a salesperson at banking, insurance, all kinds of things of that nature, right? Where you would say, what's the real value add here? What they're selling is commoditized anyway. There's not a real need. And yeah, I think we'll see more of that. In the United States, we have a lobby that protects car dealerships in most cases, right? So, but I think a lot of people feel the same way. They'd rather see, we sort of have the Carvana model here or CarMax or some of those things. But yeah, stripping out that sort of, but more specifically, I mean, part of it is as a consumer, to our earlier parts of the conversation, is that salesperson really helping them? Is that a guide, or are they just manipulating people? Right. So that piece is a danger.
It's like I made a lot of money in the motor trade. Even when I got out of the motor trade, I would have people calling me and going, look, I know you're not in the motor trade anymore, but I have someone who wants to buy a car.
Yeah.
Well, because it was the trust and the element of it. I have a question for you, Eddie. What are the key points that when you look at a funnel, it should have?
So we start with the audience and the value prop. So a lot of companies, they're trying to speak, on a website, for example, it becomes this sort of, I call it a bucket of parts website, or they're just summarizing their entire space, right? So you need to think about each funnel as one audience and one value prop. There are plenty of companies that have multiple lines of, to your point about cars, right? Tesla has 6 models now. VW has, via all the brands they own, they have hundreds. Those are for specific audiences, right? And so those are different. So it sort of starts with that, right? Then you need, how are you going to find, I know the audience, where are these people? So that's a top of funnel, right? And there are many to choose from, right? So it could be social media, you could be buying ads, you could be ranking organically, you could be, finding these people on LinkedIn and doing outreach or pulling down lists, right? And, so how does a stranger encounter this value in the first place, right? At that step, you need something really compelling. You have to break through, because we're all incessantly advertised to, and in your case and mine, cold prospected constantly, right? And so a lot of it is just noise, right? It's just my brain doesn't even register. So there's got to be something there that's of interest. So at the point of indication of interest, you need to, as quickly as possible, so this would usually be middle of funnel, take that interest and blow that up to clarity, right? What is it? And then trust. Now I understand what it is, and I believe these people that they actually have it. And then the next steps. So the middle of funnel then needs to be really clear, like, okay, I understand it. I believe these guys. Ideally, I also want these guys to win because I know who their competitors are, right? And a lot of people forgo that for a purely logical based marketing, right? Like, oh, it's logical. We'll save you money, as does everyone else, right? Right. But I want these people to win. So can I create an emotional attachment for this person, right? That's huge in that middle of funnel piece. And then clarity. How do I get the value? Well, you want this, book this meeting, right? Or you want it, put your card in, buy it, right? Or don't even put a card in and buy it, right? We do a lot of software where you sign up, you don't have to put a card in, right? Take a free trial, right? It's those things. I think those are the critical pieces. And to your point about landing pages in many ways help companies that have a bunch of value props and a bunch of audiences put some guardrails. It's not like, I'll look at landing pages and go, this is clearly a landing page. It doesn't even look like the rest of this brand. And I'll go up to the top level domain and read up on them and figure out what's going on. And a lot of people will go on LinkedIn, look up a company and all that stuff. But a landing page fundamentally reduces somebody's ability to get distracted and go, we draw sales funnels like this, but you want them to look like that, right? Yeah. That's what a landing page does. So to the extent you can get as close as possible to that. And if you want to grade it, how is this funnel working from a marketing perspective? We talk about touch one a lot, right? So we got an ad click. They went to a landing page and they did exactly what we wanted. It didn't require any remarketing. There's no second session. It's all first session, right? So when you really have those things, that's a good way to grade a funnel is like, do you have the core components? You'll see that over and over and over again. They saw it and they just went straight through all within a few minutes. That's the ideal scenario.
You mentioned there, about the emotion, and it's funny that when we're teaching sales or training, mentoring, we talk about a big fat claim. So give a big fat claim about your product or service, then give a fact, then give a benefit, and then give a real benefit. And the real benefit is the emotional attachment. And it's amazing the amount of companies go, I've heard of features and benefits, but I've never heard of real benefit, because everyone uses features and benefits and they're boring.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it's the emotional, and we call it, you need to find a person's DBM, which is their dominant buying motive. And by asking those questions and doing a bit of fact finding and your research and all, you home into that. So all those little things that a professional sales person is doing, they should be in the landing page as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. The story brand framework really helps with that, teasing those things out. But yeah, at the end of the day, we often, when we fix sales funnels, we're subordinating features, right? Yeah, you need those because you're kind of overcoming objections, right? But the features are not the reason to buy it. The reason to buy it is, in B2B, it's fundamentally, I want to make more money almost always. Yeah, and what does that do for me as an exexecutive? And what does that do for my company, my family?
I have a happy team and I buy a new house. Have we left anything out, Eddie?
You were talking about the future piece. So, the sort of recomposition of how sales teams will work, I think is a big one. But I think we're moving from a products and services perspective. It is so much easier with AI, with no code, low code, with, just so many resources available now and a global marketplace for many types of products and services. So I think we are probably moving to less monolithic companies, i.e. Facebook, Google, et cetera. So I think that we'll see smaller teams, smaller companies with more bespoke solutions. So I'm sure you deal with CRMs all the time. I see a new CRM for an industry maybe once or twice a week at this point, right? So that's just one example. But I think that's interesting that the ability to spin up a really custom situation. I was on a call earlier today that's basically was, looking at some of the challenges with LinkedIn and Indeed, right? And how can we basically strip it down into a very specific sort of industry-centric version of that, right? So I think we're going to move into more of that simply because it's easier to spin up technology, right? AI can, vibe coding or no code, low code. You can put together products and go to market, with so much less investment. There are certainly exceptions, but
it's something that would take you 6 months to do. You could probably do in 30 seconds now,
potentially, right? And
research wise, but no, I have to say to people that hallucinates. Like we're working on an AI agent, and like every website is going to have an AI agent. Like every company needed a website in the .com, and believe me, I'm old enough to know .com. I was before it even. I go, oh my God, this is hallucinating, and you have to go back to it, and it goes, oh, sorry, where the hell did you say that? Where did that come from? And I don't think people realize that we're still at a very early stage of it as well.
I think I 100% agree. I get that, utilize AI or be a distribution partner of our AI pitch constantly. And for some of them, I say, I like the idea of what you're doing, but I think the use case is off, right? this isn't a sales tool. This might be a support tool, for example, right? You know, so are you using AI in a way that makes the buyer feel like you care more? So call centers, I deal with a lot of call centers, a lot of US companies offshore to call centers, and I deal with a call center and I go, I just wasted an hour to explain something that I could 3 bullet point you. And I think this company doesn't care about me, because if they did, they would train these folks, right? And that's unfortunate. Yeah. But an AI replacement would probably be more efficient once it's run a few cycles. So there it makes sense. But to your point, if you're saying, a lot of people are saying, I've been offered many times, hey, Eddie, do you want to create your own digital avatar and video prospect people as yourself, but it's not actually you? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to have a relationship with people. I'm not interested in commoditizing myself or letting them know I care so much that I sent them, you know, a typed out scripted.
Why do you think I do podcasting?
Yeah, maybe. Exactly. But yeah, I think those things are fascinating, right? So it's a tool,
and,
right?
Ladies and gentlemen, this is an AI clone of Joe and
right.
Eddie. They're not real.
Right. But that's out there. So yeah, there are those tools are useful for producing classes, for example, right? E-learning sort of stuff. Yeah, it makes sense, right? But if it's a trust building exercise fundamentally, which is what most sales are, yeah, that's not something that you want to delegate to AI.
Yeah, and the call centers, I've been on to call centers and they've actually made me cry. Especially when it comes to phone, communication, I've cried.
Well, I imagine you, like me, it hurts your heart because the person on the other end of the call, you just go, man, I wish somebody had trained you, because your job has got to be so miserable.
I think they're only learning to draw down a paycheck.
Yeah, I think, right. It's a cost savings, but fundamentally call centers could be done a lot better.
But I do like it, and you are right, and it's where we stay is in, boutique. We could expand our business. We have a small team and we could expand it, but then we're getting into a different level. And we like being the boutique. We like the bespoke, being going in and having a look at an organization and going, okay, let's craft this playbook for you. Mm-hmm. So when your sales team are speaking to people, they're professional, they build trust, they know what to say, when to say it, know when not to say something, and bring in more deals. And I think as more organizations go through this realm of where we are in this new industrial age or the AI age, I think companies will be looking for something more authentic than something with flashy green lights and, a fluffy tail.
I think that's accurate. I think that it's a lot more fun to work on premium products, right? With a premium experience, and the margin is there to support it, right? Yeah. So people will absolutely, they don't pay you or I, right? They're paying us to do things very fast, do it right the first time. We could learn this over 5 years or 10 years, by which point the market would have moved anyway, right? But yeah, I think that's it, right? So yeah, I think we are moving to more of a lot of my work is helping companies decommoditize themselves, right? And that's across the entire funnel, right? And it's the same thing you're describing, right? Somebody comes to the call with a well-trained salesperson, they're going to articulate why this is the one and the others are not, and not doing it in a mean way or in a, there's an art to it, right? To do it in a classy way, but arrive at the same conclusion, allow that person to arrive at the same,
Speaking to one of the big sales organizations, I think they make about 30 million a month. And I was talking to them and reading between the lines, and, they said, look, and we've seen this here, you see someone doing a weekend course in SEO, or you see someone doing someone who sold something and then they become a sales trainer. You see someone, they did a week's course online on building a funnel, and suddenly they're the expert online.
Yeah.
And this big organization was saying that you'd be surprised the amount of people in our industry that would be like that don't have skin in the game, don't have the years of experience, don't have the credibility, walked it. Like myself, I say to people, look, I sold, a baked potato at 13 and I was hooked on sales. That was it. That was it for me. Most people get pushed into sales because they're crap at something else. But for me, it was, oh my God, I spoke to a person and they gave me money. Yeah, yeah.
I 100% agree with you. I think that a lot of so-called experts, in the financial industry, if you read investor news, so much of it is day trader focused, right? I mean, it just is, right? Because you can't generate content about long hold stuff every day. Like, yeah, I'm still holding this company because I'm going to hold it for 10 years, right? But so much of the quote unquote thought leadership in sales and marketing is taking people from zero to something, right? I mean, there's so many products that do that too, right? You're getting nothing. We can get you something. Yeah. But really what's interesting and fun is to take somebody who's got something, they've got some folks that can do some things, but they want to learn and they just want to blow it out and they just want to grow like crazy. Like that's exciting. That gets the adrenaline going. But the challenge, and I'm sure you've seen this, is that I've had plenty of people that said, but Eddie, you're telling me what you're saying runs contrary to my Google certificate. And I'm like, yeah, it does. Like, come on, right? So yeah. But they, in their mind, they think they are an expert, right? I'm like, no, an expert, you prove show me, you made millions and millions and millions of dollars over a period of years doing this, and I'll call you an expert. I'm not interested in your certificates.
Yeah, or they'll go, but that's not what the college taught me on marketing.
Well, that's an interesting. Also, sales is hardly taught in any sort of business, college, university, MBA at all. And most of the marketing piece, in my opinion, is taught from a very large industry, stats-based, spend equals where, you just pump more money into it and you get more out, and which has nothing to do with strategy. It basically assumes that any sort of creative or tactics or any of that is commodity, which is not.
And the Lever Brothers and the General Motors stuff.
Yeah, right.
And it's reality, the SMEs keep America going.
Yeah, from an employment perspective, but also just, from account, but also from a wealth creation perspective.
I agree with you on that. And with sales, you can have a conversation with a company and they spent, 100,000 on a new machine and 2 staff and they want to grow their revenue. And then you go, well, what have you spent on your sales team? Nothing. But you spend 100,000 on a new machine and 2 staff, which will bring in more money, but nothing happens in a company until something is sold.
It is a classic. Absolutely. It happens all the time. There's no top of funnel whatsoever, or somebody will add unbelievable headcount at high expense, but will argue with spending, a couple grand on some ads.
I spoke to one company who were building a factory in Europe, and he was saying, I'm looking for some sales. And he said, would you do it? We don't. I'm not an employee with an organization. I said, look, if you get something, oh no, look, I just want to hire we have someone that's not working out. Now, he has 20 staff building a new factory, and he couldn't get around. He had a mindset and a belief system that this is what it was, and didn't want to listen to any other avenue. And I couldn't go, all he's doing is just killing his business. That's all he's doing. He's going to look for someone, take 6 months to train him in. He won't be happy. There's frustration. You can hear the anxiety in his voice. It's shake my head sometimes at it. That's the truth.
We call it insert magic, right? It's, strategy document says, salesperson, insert magic, success.
No training.
Right, exactly.
No training on it.
Yeah, very common.
I have 2 questions for you. And the first one, if you could go back in your life, what would you do different to where you are now? What change would you have made if you're looking back in your life? What practice?
I think I've had, so much fun in my life and done so many things and had so much exposure and international and worked on all kinds of interesting things. So I don't have too many regrets. If I were to categorically say a few things, I've stayed in projects too long. Right. I'm a stubborn entrepreneur, and sometimes that can get the best of you. Right. So sometimes, the juice isn't worth the squeeze type stuff. I've definitely been guilty of that at times. I would say that's probably the biggest one. But, other than that, I've loved my career. It's been fascinating. I've gotten to see all kinds of stuff, and I just think it's building. The stuff that we get to see every day now. It's remarkable, right? I just feel like I have this sort of lens into entrepreneurship globally now, which is just, it's awesome.
And the last question, is what did you get wrong to get right?
Oh, man, I've created quite a few.
Give me one. You can only give me one.
Only one? I mean, I've done that. I used to be a brand denier. That's a good one. So I built a marketplace app out of my own cash, bootstrapped it. And in retrospect, it looked horrible. Horrible, horrible, horrible. I thought I was a graphic designer because I could play with graphic design tools. And I mean, it's so embarrassing. I mean, I actually have a blog about this, but when I did my MBA, some of my fellow students who actually knew design took what I'd done and did their version of it. And I was like, I don't like it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, theirs was so much better. Right. So, I mean, that's one where I think early in my career, I didn't understand how meaningful putting thought into the visual and the words. I was very finance oriented, right? I thought if it's logical, people will do it. And that's so untrue.
Yeah. I used to build websites, hate building websites, despise them. But I remember when starting off and building my own, you build your own first website.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
As you're building it and as you're completing it, it's already out of date.
Yes.
Yeah, it looks like, yeah. But, stuff has come on now, like Get a Mentor now and everything. That's even changed to the drag and drop. Like I started off at MS-DOS coding.
Same. Yeah, I built websites in HTML. Yeah. When I'm a dial-up modem. So, yeah.
Well, I was in, realized I can't do this. I can't sit at a computer all day and type code because it was sales at 13, as it was said, and I've had some successful businesses over the years because of sales. But yeah, at least you were to get it wrong, to get it right. You realize you found what your gift was. It wasn't. It's actually facing your own truth.
Absolutely. And yeah, learning what really needs to be delegated. Yes, absolutely. For sure.
Eddie, if someone wants to reach out to you, where can they get hold of you?
Yeah, salesfunnelprofessor.com. Find us there, or any of the major social media, LinkedIn as well. But yeah, look us up there, send us a note, or start a chat with us.
And on LinkedIn, give a shout out your handle on LinkedIn.
Eddie Davis for sure. I think I'm eddie.davis.global, I believe.
Eddie, thanks for coming on to Getting Wrong to Get It Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. This was fun.
Getting it wrong to get it right.